make a web project using Python, and I thought I can make this simple, make this really quick and concise without a lot of faff, because a lot of tutorials I've seen online are really dense, and usually you just want to learn how to use a simple programming tool and then just kind of work in baby steps from that. So let's get started. So I'm going to assume that you have Python 3.7 or above installed on your machine, and you've got your environment variables all set up so that your Python environment can be found. So I'm going to be working in an IDE. An IDE is what you use to edit code in. So the IDE I'm going to be using is Pycharm, so this thing. Now, I like Pycharm because it deals with a lot of the finicky aspects of this sort of work, and you don't have to really think about it much. So I'm just going to create a project here, simple web project, and I'm going to create a new virtual environment. Now, a virtual environment is like when you install Python on your machine, it duplicates that but stores it locally on the project, so that when you run the project, you run the project from this small environment here, so that if you do end up installing more and more libraries, they don't conflict with one another and it keeps everything clean. So it's best practice to always use a new environment, and yeah, so let's just create it. Okay, cool, so we've got a main project here. Let's delete that. We want to delete this. So since we're going to try and keep this as simple as possible, I'm going to download the libraries I need through Pycharm settings. So if you go into project, we go Python interpreter, we do plus, we do what we're going to use here is Flask. So this is sort of a way of creating a server on your local machine that only you can access locally. And the general project structure Flask sticks to is you need a file, a Python file called application. That's not how you spell it. P1. And you need a folder called templates. Now, templates will hold all your HTML files, and the HTML files is what a user interacts with. So the visual stuff you see on websites. So if we create a HTML, let's just call this default, the default HTML page to create is something called like index. So you can see here, because it's Pycharm, it's created an auto-generated HTML sort of page. Now we need to import a few things into our Python project. So we want to say import. Actually, we're going to say from Flask lowercase import Flask uppercase, and we also want to import render templates. We also want to import requests, and we want to say here our app is equal to Flask uppercase open bracket underscore name underscore. So that basically says that Flask I want to run from this application, and we also need to give it a place to start. So we want to say this is equal to main app.run. Cool, we started out. So we've got everything, the finicky stuff out of the way. So we just kind of press run and the server should start, and yeah. So now we need to define a route or a route where, when the server starts, where's the location that it will go to first. So we will start off with something like this, and we'll say that when the application loads up, go to the default route of this /, which is this, and we'll tie this function to it, and we'll say, can you please render the template HTML index.html. So basically saying, when the website loads up, run this function. This function should hopefully create this index.html page, which by default is this. Let's give it a name. Let's call it start index. Let's give it a thing to say. Hello. save it. Go here and let's run it. And you can see a URL has been presented to us, and you can see here hello, and you can see the title is index. So you can see that there. Yeah, you can see that there. So that's basically a pretty simple way of how to make a Python web project. Okay, so since we've made this project, I think it's fairly simple, so let's add some more complexity to it. So let's create another template. Something like hello. So the idea I had was let's make it so a user has a text field that they've entered some input in, submit that text field. That text field then goes into a new page that says hello, the input that the user has typed in. So that way we can show how to pass data from one web page to another. So let's just jump into that then. So we're not going to say hello anymore. We're going to use something called forms. So form action equals hello, and we want to use a method of post, and we want to say input. We want to say that the name of the input is equal to name. We want to say the type of input is a text, and we want to give it a placeholder so that the user knows to type in some text here. And then we want another input so that the user knows how to submit the form off. So we can say type submit, and that way they should be good. Yeah, okay, that works. And then we want this web page to then ask, well, not ask, but tell our user hello, and we want the variable to be name. Now, so we're basically saying here, when we press submit, send it to this URL location, which is also tied in our application. And we're using a post method to do that. Post method and get method, basically two methods you can use. Post is when sending data, and get is when you're receiving data. And if we go here, this syntax, I'm not too sure its naming. I think it's called ginger or gingerly, something like that. And that allows us to pass variables into a HTML document through Python. So yeah, so we got that. So let's then say another app root. So the app root we just defined previously, dot root, which was hello. And then we want to say def hello, our function. And then we want to say, just before I forget, we also want to add methods, because the default for something like this is, the default is it will always be a get method here. So we need to specify that we're not going to use a get method, but we're going to use a post method. So we have to specify that in our route. And then we want to say something like name equals default, and then we want to say if request dot form dot get. Now if you're using a post method, you want to use request.form. If you're using a get method, you want to use request.args and then get. It's odd naming convention, but it's the way it works. So then we want to say, if that's the case, then name our name to request dot form dot get name, and then we want to return a render template of hello.html, and then we want to pass in a variable of name. Now, the way Flask's variable passing works, you have to assign a variable name to your variable, which is strange because you already have a variable name here, but you have to assign it the same name for it to understand that you're using it. It's odd, but it's the way the convention works here. So we've got hello post method, we've got that right, that makes sense, passing it in, we then go into here, we pass it here, cool. Okay, that should hopefully work. So let's run it. Let's type in something, and you can see here it's passed through onto the next web page. And then if we type nothing, you can see it says default. Cool, does the job. Okay, so that's pretty much how you make a web project with a bit more complexity. I'll see if I can make another video later on. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.